Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my Friday reads for October 25th, 2019. The final Friday reads for October 2019. Let's get to it. I mentioned last week I'd give a more complete review of this book once I finished it, which I did. This is The Testaments by Margaret Atwood. So just quickly, there's a lot of hype around this. This is a continuation of The Handmaid's Tale, a very famous work she wrote about 30 years ago. This takes things a couple of decades into the future, and it is very much based on the current TV show. The three characters who are the main characters feature heavily in the TV show. One of them, Aunt Lydia, is also from The Handmaid's Tale. I think one of the major problems, or the most major problem about The Testaments versus The Handmaid's Tale is that we take something from a very insular, private journal of somebody who's just part of the system, and then we come here to a revolution. But Gilead is not fleshed out enough for that. Because we are dealing with big movers and shakers trying to take down the system, we need to understand the system better. But ultimately, I feel like Gilead seems like a nation of 10 people in Boston. And just like on the show, which takes us from a small insular diary into revolution, there's really no complex world building or understanding of the infrastructure. A second problem I find with this book has to do with the title and the fact that the characters are giving testimonies, and it seems like this is a way to sort of shortchange them emotionally. I feel like a lot of my personal investment came from the TV show and from what I built up about the characters there. Maybe I'm being too harsh on it, because as I was reading it, I was very engrossed. I don't necessarily think it's a bad book, even if it might not be the best book. I am ultimately disappointed. I was hoping for more, but I'm still glad that I took part in this. There's a whole bunch of booktube reviews of this book that I skipped past as I was prepping to and ultimately reading it. I don't know if I'll have the time to get back to them. My booktube watching is already backed up enough as it is. Although today I did watch Eric Carl Anderson's video of the Booker Prize itself and got to hear the titterings firsthand as it was announced by the judge that they'd be awarding 2 titles this year. I also like how Eric panned the camera to his own whoa expression after the ceremony was over. So yeah, now the hype train has left the station. My first thought was that I would next go on to this book, Paper is White by Hilary Zaid, which is the final Jewish fiction book published in 2018 that I highlighted in the beginning of the year that I wanted to read. I didn't mention this one last week, but since I'm putting it on my thumbnail for this week, I wanted to have something fresh and interesting to say. I got a handful of pages in. I'm intrigued enough so far. This is going to be a very quiet, insular novel, I believe, taking place in the dot-com era. Our main character, Ellen, is a newly engaged lesbian, and this is at a very new time for that sort of thing to be happening. She is Jewish, her family is Jewish. They've been in America for a while, but they're pretty close-lipped about, private people. There's a attitude among some Jewish sectors basically about being close-lipped and not inviting any trouble. There's remnants of the anxiety of being victims of pogroms and what have you. And also Ellen works with aging Holocaust survivors. I think this is going to be a pretty slight literary personal epiphany sort of novel. I'm a little worried that the language will be a little too thick and difficult to parse, but I'm still in early pages of this, so I don't want to be too judgmental yet. Also, I want to point out, I found this book through the Jewish Book Council's reviews, and this book is published by a very small publisher, Bywater Books, which when I looked into them, I discovered that they publish lesbian fiction. Which set off a light bulb in my head because I write short stories about lesbians. Maybe I should move on to novels. Anyway, I'll link their site down below. They publish more than literary fiction. They publish several genres, so if supporting small presses is your jam, you can check them out. But ultimately, I had to put down Paper is White and go to this book, which I actually talked about last week. This is Gateway to the Moon by Mary Morris. the second to last Jewish fiction in 2018 that I put on my list in January. I was going to put this off and finish Paper is White first, but this is the one with the library holds on it, so I have to get it back to the library by the end of the weekend, so still got a lot of work to do in this. I'm still early days into this book as well, as of early Friday. This is a somewhat historical, somewhat contemporary novel, taking place partially, or maybe perhaps mostly, in New Mexico, and then the historical parts will take place starting in Spain in 1492 and then moving into Columbus exploration stuff and into the New World. This is about a family of conversos or crypto Jews. The background of that is that during the Spanish Inquisition, the Spaniards and, well, the Catholic Church, also in Portugal and ultimately in other places too, they passed an edict that Jews either had to convert or leave. So lots of Jews converted because they had little to no way to get out of their countries of origin, but they secretly kept up their true beliefs. But then the Inquisition ranked up behind that because the Catholic Church wasn't thrilled with the idea of, secret Jews and secret Muslims. So anyway, a lot of Jews did try to escape to the New World, trying to outrun the Inquisition and what have you. And there was history of secretly practicing Jewish rituals, but as the centuries went on, the families would continue to practice these rituals, but, forget the Jewish aspect of it, really. And this continues to today. There's a significant crypto community in the southwest of America, and I believe just lately they've been starting to get savvy to the realization that, their practices come from their Jewish roots. And so this is a fiction novel, and one of the main characters, I believe, is going to start babysitting for a Jewish transplant family from New York, and he's going to discover, based on the back cover, that their Jewish practices are similar to his family's practices. So far there's been a lot of setup. Again, I don't feel like I can judge so quickly in the book, but I am invested. Just bumped the camera there, so I don't know if this angle will be slightly different. Also, I don't know if you can hear the beeping in the background outside, but I just have one final book to talk about. This is the book that will take me into November. This is The Wangs versus the World by Jade Chang. And some of you might remember this book if you've been keeping up with the buzzy new releases of yesteryear. I, in fact, found this a year or so ago, I believe, at the Gaithersburg Book Festival at the library book sale. And I'd recognized it from its buzzy days, and I wanted to pick it up because it seemed like a fun, more lighthearted, I think, novel than I'm used to, about a Chinese-American family with family drama. I love that stuff. This really will circle me back quite nicely to one of my early reads of the month, Searching for Sylvie Lee, which was also about a Chinese-American immigrant family. And I'll read from the flap. Charles Wang is mad at America, a brash, big-hearted immigrant businessman who built a cosmetics empire and made a fortune. He's just been ruined by the financial crisis. Now, all Charles wants to do is get his kids safely stowed away so he can go to China and attempt to reclaim his family's ancestral lands and his pride. Charles pulls Andrew, his aspiring comedian son, and Grace, his style-obsessed daughter, out of schools he can no longer afford. Together with their stepmother Barbara, they embark on a cross-country road trip from their foreclosed Bel Air home to the upstate New York hideout of the eldest daughter, disgraced art world it girl Sina. But with his son waylaid by a temptress in New Orleans, his wife ready to defect for a set of 1,000 thread count sheets, and an epic smash-up in North Carolina, Charles may have to choose between the old world and the new, between keeping his family intact and finally fulfilling his dream of starting anew in China. So another thing that interests me about this is that it seems like an unusual immigrant story in the way that actually he's been successful in the new world and wanting to return to the old, rather than sort of scrabbling for purchase as an immigrant in America. Although I guess the tables have turned. Anyway, I will ultimately report back. But, well, that covers it for me now. But to segue from that, I have to say that I'm putting a stopper on Friday Reads video for about a month. I'll hopefully be back in December. November, as many of you might know, is NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month. So I'm trying to cut back a little bit on my other obligations as I sprint toward 50,000 words in 30 days. That being said, I don't want to keep BookTube completely on the back burner. I will be doing weekly nano vlogs. That's been my custom for a couple of years. But I'm also, on top of that, going to try to do a few tag videos throughout the month. Hopefully they won't be too taxing. But I do want to keep connected, at least in some way, to BookTube during this time, so we'll see how it goes. Anyway, I hope your October reading and nano prepping, if you're doing that, has been going well. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.